We're on Facebook and Twitter with our post show, continuing our discussion on artists of color claiming space in the time of COVID. Michael, you're up first to talk about the power of these stories and why it's important that they be in the space.
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is that white people in this country can be born, raised, educated, marry, school, have families, and die without ever having to actually have meaningful relationships with people of color. And many of them don't see that as a loss. But I am sort of here to say you are missing out. You are missing out on the food, the dance, the culture, the art, all the contributions that we bring to this country. And so many of our stories, when we are put on stage, are talking about the traumas that we've experienced. And I hope that we can start shifting that to talking about the joys and the contributions that we have made to culture. One of the things that I sort of jokingly talk about is that if Trump had built that wall around Mexico, I think all the Mexicans should have taken their enchiladas and their tacos back to see what we're losing by not allowing and celebrating the contributions that people have brought to this nation. It would be terribly boring to only see one person's story all your life. So know that, and this has to start when people are young. I mean, sometimes when I do race equity workshops, I ask the people that I'm talking to just close your eyes for a minute and just imagine dance, imagine music, imagine theater, and imagine art. Now open your eyes, and when you open your eyes, are you seeing hip-hop? Are you seeing graffiti? Are you seeing African dance? What are you seeing? And what are you missing out by not seeing those things? And many of them are shocked. They're like, you're right. I saw ballet, I saw opera, I did not see other people's culture. And then when we support our kids going to see art, where are we supporting them to go? Are they going to just the symphony? Are they going to the ballet? Why aren't they going to Shaumba's organization? Why aren't they going to Tony's organization? Why aren't they going to Maurice's organization? We have to think about how we're exposing our kids from a very young age to the stories that they're supposed to see, the stories about the nation that they live in, not the white nation, but the nation they actually live in. Super important to the future of the arts.
I want to explore a little bit more of what you said about not just the stories of trauma, because I believe that's one of the myths of what black art is, in whatever form it's in, that the perception is, oh God, here you come with something I'm going to be depressed about at the end. So why should I want to see that? Shaumba, I'll let you go first.
During my cough attack, I wanted to add on, we did a production in Needham a few years ago, and a Jewish man came to me at the end of the show and said, you know, Shaumba, I realized that your story wasn't just about you, but that was about all people. And my sister and I had a long conversation about that, because our story is about everyone. It's about everyone, and it's just as important. And I wanted to make sure, you know, I mentioned that when you do, I love how you said, you know, when you close your eyes, you know, what do you see? What do you want to see? Right? You don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. It's important for you to understand that we're supposed to be a melting pot, you know, and in that melting pot, there's more than just the red tomatoes. We have to make sure we're understanding and experiencing and seeing everybody, every culture, every race. It's important. It's extremely, extremely important.
Tony, do you think that there is an ongoing myth that when you talk about artists of color, that what's about to be presented is trauma on parade?
Well, that's I haven't had that experience, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I should say.
Yeah.
But I can say that whenever I talk to people about, let's say, the urban nutcracker, they say, oh, yeah, that's the black nutcracker. And if they come to see the show, I'm trying to embrace the whole world in that show, the whole community in that show. And it's because I've always my whole life seen separateness from who I am. And I've always tried to come together and be at peace with myself. And I fully am at peace with myself and my family and my friends. And so I try to show that in all of the work that I do in my dance studio. We have just across the board in Jamaica Plain, kids from the projects, kids from Southern Brookline that come to our school, and they're all mixed together. And my staff is multiracial, and things that I do, I just try to show the wholeness of race and not just focus on one race or another. And so
you've been pushing against that mythology for some time. Maurice?
Yeah, I respond to a lot of things I've heard. I think, and my internet might be a little weird, so I'm just gonna keep talking.
No, you're fine.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I think it's particularly going to theater, you think, oh goodness, it's always trauma, but it's oftentimes struggle. But it's often struggle in terms of in relation to whiteness. So that is around talking about themes of oppression. But then you look at something like Choir Boy, which was it still had drama. It was still dramatically interesting, but it was something that necessarily wasn't in relationship to whiteness. But then, so I respond to a lot of what I've heard where and I think that speaks to the idea that in the theatrical space, you're personifying themes and ideas. You're right, Shaumba, you were saying that, people can come and see a narrative that's not necessarily theirs on the surface, but at the end of the day, we're all human. We all can relate to the essentials of humanity, and that is something that can be profoundly moving. But then a little bit of me is I'm thinking about like Belarus, what's happening right now. They've been protesting for 3 months after somebody, incumbent president, is refusing to accept the results of the election. Sound familiar, right? And then there's a playwright who went he's in hiding. He's in hiding. He wrote a play about this, and now it's being swept around the world and translated in all these different languages that's speaking specifically to a moment. So I think that, and there's Arlequin Players in Brookline. They're directing. Igor Golniak out there is doing the Russian version. So that's how I first heard about it. I just heard about it yesterday. So I'm thinking like there's moments when art just has to respond to the moment. And do what art does best, which is to personify and make it human and make it so people can understand thematically. But then you're right, you also have to figure out how you cannot traumatize and trigger your audience whose culture is on stage. So I think about Monica Wainanduna, who directed our production of Passover that dealt with police violence, and she worked with us to create a healing space after every show. So I'm thinking like, how can you, if you are going to do something that hits a nail on the head when you're talking about issues of oppression and trauma, how are you taking care of the people that are going through it and make sure they can receive the message in as much of a healing, safe way as possible? And then sometimes you need to do something that is celebrating and celebratory and uplifting and saying the power, how we are, I'm talking about Black folks, and particularly how we are artists and performers, and how we also are educators and doctors and politicians and leaders and presidents and vice presidents.
The reason I asked the question, Michael, is because I know all that, and we all know all that, and it's very important for artists to respond in the moment. But I've seen artists of color respond in the moment out of their experience, and people go, well, here we go. So that's the reason why I'm asking the question about how you do that and inform people that, this is our experience, but it's not all trauma.
Right. Yeah, I think especially in the American theater, and we as Black artists know that we have to share our contributions to culture and celebrate who we are and what we've done. And it's hard to tell our story without telling the whole story. But I sort of, and I will also say it's the white theater makers that are putting up the trauma dramas and profiting off the trauma dramas. And I just think we have to find that balance. You can't tell the Jewish story without telling the story of the Holocaust. You have to sort of have that balance so that we are seeing the whole thing that makes the whole person. I sort of liken it to, if I'm doing a show about someone who's been sexually abused, I should not expect a whole audience of sexually abused people to come and see that show and enjoy it. It's re-injuring. It's re-traumatizing. We have to have a balance. And so I'm just encouraging people to let's overrun the market with stories about our joy. I mean, I'm a Black gay man. I have a Vietnamese child. My whole week is like in anticipation of my son coming home from college. That's all I'm thinking about. Where's that story? Where's the story of the Black man with the Vietnamese child who's just excited about seeing his son? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the stories I think we need to start adding to the canon of work.
So how do you think it's best for you all to be supported in this point? Tony, again, I'll refer to something you said, which is that you firmly believe that 50 to 60% of the art scene as we know it, not just here in Boston, but we're talking about Boston, Greater Boston, Massachusetts, is not going to come back. So that leaves, a few people to survive, and how they survive becomes very important. So what do you want to put out there for folks to understand this is how to support you in this if they want to see you around? I'll take anybody who would like to respond.
Oh, sure. I think just doing good art, and if I feel that that one can march, in protest, which is important, but there's also showing protest through art. And if you can do it in such a way that you embrace not just Black people or white people, but all people, and in that story, you show the kernel of togetherness. And if it's done in a framework of really excellent production, with good dancers and costumes and lighting, et cetera, in the theater, then I think people will come. They'll flock to you, to what you're presenting. And so there's a statement in what I do. And it's not hitting someone on the head with the sledgehammer. It's just presenting it through my story. And
okay, well, Tony, let me just interrupt you and say this. Yeah. You know the expression is starving artists, right? So y'all can do some great work and maybe nobody sees it. I'm being for real. What in this moment, somebody's not going to survive. You, Tony, have said 50 to 60% of the art organizations will not survive. So you can do all the greatest stuff you want, but is there something else that needs to happen to support you into survival? That's all I'm asking.
Well, we're all out there with nonprofits trying to raise the money, and it's like we get the crumbs. And so I think a lot of the large artistic institutions in Boston are very well funded, but the smaller institutions, it's like I'm a one-man show. I'm like the only employee that works all the time, and I work for free just to keep things afloat. I know the dancers that have danced with me, they don't have jobs now. They're not surviving. And so I think I would just ask for folks out there to support Black art and in Boston.
Yeah, it reminds me that the city has a fund to support artists. And there were some recent grants made, 146, and of that list, about 44 were 2 artists of color or 2 organizations of color. So, there is that. And I don't know if the grants were different sizes. I imagine they were. So there's one thing, but, we can see from there what the percentage of support is from some institutions. So I'm asking the question to all the rest of you. Shamba, how can you be supported so you end up surviving at the end of this?
We need funds. So, our production of Our Story, the celebration of the African American experience, we go from before we were enslaved, as I said earlier, to our life in society in present day. But we also touch upon all the positives that African people and African Americans have contributed throughout history, right? We can't continue to do that if we don't have the funds to do that. So we need people to, purchase tickets to our shows. We need people to make individual donations. We need grants that we can apply for where we don't have to jump through hoops and rings, and give blood to be able to get those funds. We need the support to help pay our teachers, help pay our bills, and to keep arts alive. So when people are selling tickets for $20 and $10, we need to do our best to support one another. It's important. And schools are still looking for ways for their students to participate in performances. They're trying to figure out a way to bring that into their schools. So we just have to do our best to send our information out, and the people have to do their best to support what we are giving, because we're giving some incredible, incredible arts to the world.
Michael.
Yeah. Speaking to what Tony said, humans should be taking care of those who need it the most. That is kind of what the whole nonprofit and charitable organization was founded on, the principle of. Government can't do it, so nonprofits can step in and take care of each other. But we have to focus on those who need it the most. There's a gap between those who have privileges, and I'm talking about institutions that Tony spoke of, the large ones, white ones that are well-funded, and those who are marginalized. And if we center those who have privilege, then the gap widens. The privileged get more privilege, and the marginalized become more marginalized. We have to take care of those who are most marginalized, and that will close the gap. So everyone, organizations, individuals, funders, government, everyone, take care of the people that need it the most. Support them, because everyone will benefit from that. We cannot keep throwing money at organizations that have lots of money already. Take care of our marginalized community, our BIPOC community, and especially our Black community, because this country is so anti-Black, and we always are last on the list. Help us.
Maurice.
I don't have much else to add. I think that was perfectly well encompassed by that statement. We all need support. We've all had programs that were closed. We've all had folks that are that have had to be furloughed or that are underemployed. At the Front Porch Arts Collective, we were on this really nice upward trajectory in building partnerships and looking to becoming self-sustaining. And then the COVID has really sort of flatlined our progression in some ways. But now I love that the time is now the current times are now examining the funding structure and who gets money, like Michael said, and who doesn't, and for what reasons. Because at the end of the day, people think that people of color can't handle the money, don't know the organizations aren't going to be sustainable, and you have to overdo the proving that you deserve this money, and then it comes with more restrictions. So I just am encouraged by examining of those aspects of the funding landscape for nonprofits, and I look forward optimistically to them being dismantled and, like Michael said, funding those that need the most.
All right, so we're just one last question. I want you to project forward to this time next year. Where would you hope to be?
I think diversity is good for business, and those organizations that aren't building and being fiercely anti-racist will start to cease to exist. I told my organization that we are predominantly white for one reason, and that's racism. If we don't like that, we need to change it and start doing things to make sure we are opening our doors to people that have never come before. The people of color that I know love theater. They just may not love coming to our theater because of what we are doing to disenfranchise them. So I'm hoping in a year, the buildings are open, they're safe, we're continuing to do wonderful digital creative work, but also now our audiences are more diverse, our staff is more diverse, our funding is more diverse.
Shaumba?
I want to be in two places. I want to be in a theater that's not afraid to show true Black theater on stage. And I want to be sitting in a theater with 500 people at Twist and Shout, watching our dancers present their hearts out on stage, live and in person. That's where I want to be next year.
Tony?
Well, I would like to survive COVID this year to get to next year. And once I'm there, I want to I want to be able to ramp up again with productions, because we're going to have a lag year where people are not rehearsing and training and just trying to show that we survived. And we're booked into the Shubert Theater in December of 2021 if the COVID has been tamed. And I hope to be there then. And just to say, this year until next year, next month we'll be live streaming one of our shows from last year of the Urban Nutcracker from the Shubert Theater, and just hope for the safety and health of the country and the world, and that we could all be in the theater again and just enjoying live theater, which I miss so much personally.
And Maurice?
Only thing I would add to all the beautiful statements my colleagues have said is, new administration up and running and with all of this nonsense. Number one, and number two, I would add, Shaumba Move. I haven't told you this, but when I was a Boston Public School teacher, we actually did now I'm getting emotional. We did this whole fundraising for these two young ladies who just danced, but maybe didn't have the funds to take programming with originations. So we did a fundraising thing and sent them to the summer program, and the way that it was transformative to them in their lives, I look forward to a year being able to reinvest everything that everyone said, and I'll just add the education programs, the ways that we can support young people in the ways that they can engage with the arts and the stuff that we do, because it is life-changing without having to wear the mask. So I thank you all, and I thank you for making the opportunity that we were able to support young folks for, and that's what I would love to see in a year.
Well, I appreciate this conversation. It's very personal to me. I really appreciate art. I'm an art supporter, and my nephew's a dancer in New York in a new troupe. So it's real personal. Good luck, and thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.